Hello, I'm Bruce Lorincz, and this show is called Bruce on the Loose, and I talk to a lot of people in the county and city and school system, and we're very pleased to have Judge Steve McIlvaine on with us today. And Judge McIlvaine, thank you so much for sharing about the workings of the court and educating our viewers.
Well, thank you for having me on, Bruce.
What about your educational background, Judge?
Okay. Obviously, in order to be a judge, you have to be an attorney. So obviously, after high school, I went to college. I went to Muskingum College. It's a small liberal arts college.
Home of the Muskies, I think?
Muskies, yeah, down in New Concord, Ohio. Actually, I was a speech and communications major. But at the time, my mother's a teacher, so I also did all the education. If all I had to do was student teaching, I could be a teacher, because I wasn't sure what I was going to do. Until my senior year, my oldest brother's an attorney, so I thought, well, law school might be fun. So I applied, I got accepted. I went to Ohio Northern University over in Ada, Ohio, for law school. So that's 3 years. So after 3 years of law school, took the bar exam. That's the exam that licensed you to practice law in the state of Ohio. So that was my formal education background.
What about some judicial positions you've held before being a judge?
Okay. The only thing I did back, Judge Hensel, David Hensel was the first judge, the first elected judge in the Wadsworth Municipal Court. And I was a young attorney, and after you practice 6 years, you can be an acting judge. So Judge Hensel had me as an acting judge for several times. So that was always kind of fun, and that also kind of got my interest and whetted the appetite, so to speak.
I bet that really gave you a good foundation to kind of see things that you wouldn't really see as you were an attorney.
It gave you the other side. You know, I'm always on this side of the bench. What it was like sitting up there on that side of the bench, and it's interesting. It's different, very different.
And how long have you been the Wadsworth Municipal Judge?
I've been on the bench 25 years.
Wow. Why is it, Judge, that judges are elected for a 6-year term, yet we see council 2 years, the mayor 4 years, and many other positions 4 years? Why is that a unique position?
That's just what it is in the statute. That's the law. And I'm sure that in Ohio, whether it's Supreme Court, Court of Appeals, Common Pleas, Municipal, it's all 6-year terms because it's statutory. I think the judges got together and said, we don't have to run every 2 years. That's ridiculous, because it is. And for 6 years, and judges are supposed to be fair, so we have to be fair and impartial. So in Ohio, we have to run as a party. The general election's nonpartisan. So to get there, we have to go through a political primary. But the concept is judges should not be political animals. So I think the less we have to run, the better that enforces that we are impartial. And it doesn't matter, we're Democrat, Republican, Independent. That's not who we are.
So I just learned something. I didn't know that in a primary you had to be affiliated with a party, but in a general election you're not?
You're nonpartisan. It's kind of magic. It's Ohio magic. We judges do that.
Speaking of elections, we have odd years, our local elections. We have the city has an issue on. The city council is being elected coming up. The county has a couple issues, and the school, a very important bond and levy. Why do you feel, from your position, it's vital for people to vote?
Well, obviously, this is your town, this is your county, this is your state. If you want to have a say, you have to participate. And the best thing we have is our vote. That's how we let our elected officials know what our feelings are, what our positions are, because we elect them to represent us. Okay, and we have to let them know what we feel. So you have to get out and exercise that right to vote, or you have no right to complain.
It's really important to be educated as well, especially on local elections. There isn't quite as much information, but certainly there are ways in newspapers and meetings and sessions that these entities have to go ahead and get a background to know what you're voting for.
Sure, and it's very important. You have to get out there, you have to study it, listen to it, pay attention. And make sure it's good information you're receiving. You got to weigh that.
There was a gentleman that I had pass in school, a farmer that went through the class. I had taught government, and I always stressed to be participating, to be involved. And there was an issue a couple years ago that the school had that he was against, and he had a big sign on his farm and said, "Vote no." And I ran into him and I said, "Why are you doing that?" He said, "Well, you're the blame." And I said, "Well, why?" He said, "Well, you said to get involved."
That's
and
right.
I was involved, and that's a case.
And it doesn't, if that's their opinion, they have a right to express that opinion. You just hope that both sides are open to discuss and listen to each other, but he has every right to position, express his position.
How many people are employed by the Wadsworth Municipal Court?
Okay, I think we have right now 11. I mean, I have a clerk of courts, Cassie Fry. She's the clerk.
I think she's a Black River graduate,
Yeah,
by the
yeah,
way.
that's right.
So
That's
another
right.
student I had,
That's right.
Steve.
I got 5 full-time deputy clerks, 1 part-time. I've got 2 probation officers. I've got a bailiff, and I have a bailiff also that's a part-time secretary and part-time assignment commissioner. So we wear several hats. We help each other out, and then myself.
So what would the probation officer's job consist of?
Probation officer, I'd say someone comes into me and it's a crime, whether it's an OVI, whether it's a domestic violence. Oftentimes, part of their sentence is I'll give them some suspended jail time, put them on probation, and then require them to do things. Maybe some home arrest, maybe do some counseling. If it's a drug and alcohol, I'll have to get an assessment so the probation officer will follow through on that. Make sure they do what I need them to do. Make sure they get the counseling, they do the follow-up lessons, treatment, they do the community service, they do the programs we need them to do, and they stay out of trouble. So they monitor all that after sentencing.
So the jurisdiction of the Wadsworth Municipal Court just isn't in Wadsworth
No,
proper.
no,
Can you explain that just a bit?
We're called Wadsworth Municipal Court because we're physically located in Wadsworth, and Wadsworth funds us. But we're the southern part of the Medina County. So if you vision it, the 5 townships on the bottom, ranging from Wadsworth to Seville to Westfield Center to Lodi, and then we have Sharon Township. So that's our court's jurisdiction.
What are some of the cases that might be involved with the criminal division?
Well, criminal cases, we're a municipal court, and so we handle misdemeanors, criminal cases. Those would be crimes that would be punishable by 1 year in jail or less. We do traffic cases, all traffic cases, whether it's a parking ticket or driving under the influence of alcohol or an accident that results in a death. If there's no alcohol or drugs, it would come to my court. And we do civil cases. Our civil cases would be less than $15,000. The concept is, you go to common pleas, civil takes kind of a low priority, criminal takes priority, so it might take you a year or 2 to get a civil case. In my court, you have a civil case, we're going to get it done 6 months to a year. Done. We're done.
So
we're a lot quicker.
Yeah, a lot quicker procedure. Yeah, when people think of the courts, they think of a long, arduous procedure.
Not a municipal
and
court.
It's not quite that situation with the municipal court.
Yeah, we want to get people in court, get their day in court, and get resolutions done.
What would a typical civil case be? A person suing someone else? Would it be like property arguments, lines, and could it be that I contract someone to do work and they didn't do construction work?
We get a lot
things
of
like that.
Yeah, it's interesting because we also have a small claims court. The small claims is if the claim is $6,000 or less, a person come in and they don't have to hire an attorney. Attorneys are welcome, but it's a case where for $25 they can file it and they can come in and argue their own case. And we set those like 5, 10 days, 15 days. We have those quick, okay? But with a civil case, you're going to sue someone. And most of ours are credit card debt. Companies are suing because people aren't paying the credit card debts. That's a very common one. But yeah, people hire landscapers, people to do work, construction on the house, add-ons. And they get upset for one reason or another, and then we have to try to resolve it. So at times I have to want to be an expert on auto mechanics, home construction, and it's going to be challenging. It's interesting though.
What about if you would go to a criminal case and have a jury trial? What is the process of becoming a juror? It seems like you have 1 or 2 situations that people really can't wait to be a juror and they're really excited, maybe some retirees like myself, I'd love to be on a jury, and then you have the reluctant ones, people that try to say, well, boy, I'm really busy and I can't make it. It's an arduous journey for them.
Sure. In Ohio, there's 2 ways to select a jury. 2 legal ways. You can either do it by voter registration or registration of your automobiles. We still use voter registration in Medina County. And all the courts do it together. Like, for example, I think it's around November, they do a jury selection. They draw electronically names. And they do it for me, they do it for Medina Muni, they do it for the Common Pleas Courts. And they do it all at once. And they'll go up there and it's a computer and they'll say, every year they pick another number, like say 38. Then every 38th name gets pulled, okay? Because people come to me and say, I've gotten called 3 years in a row. I said, well, get a lottery ticket, because you're lucky. But because every year they take names out, they purge the list. So that's why, even though they pick different numbers, you might get drawn 2 or 3 years in a row. But I get a list, and they break it down. I get 60 names every week, okay? So I send out notices to 60 people, and then they respond, well, I'm on vacation, or they ask to be excused, or for age. Any number of reasons they can ask to be excused. We usually get about 25 in a week. In a municipal court, I only need a jury of 8, but we seat 1 alternate. So I need 9 people. I need at least 14 to go for a trial. I prefer 17. So if I get 25 or so, that's sufficient. And it is amazing. People, I didn't want to come, but most people afterwards say, I enjoyed that, or that wasn't bad, or that was a great learning experience. We've even had some high school kids. And it's interesting. Some of them want, because they're in school, but unless it's finals or some tests they've come up, I say, why don't you come and serve? And afterwards they said, my civic teacher gave me extra credit because I came back and I told the experience to the class. Well, what better way to learn about the process of our judicial system than sitting on a jury?
I agree wholeheartedly. Yeah. In fact, this November, there'll be a few of those seniors be eligible, but as the year goes on, like in the spring, I would say probably 85 to 90% of the kids will have turned 18, and they could go ahead and vote at that time and be eligible for, in our system that Wadsworth uses, be eligible for the jury. I couldn't think of anything more practical for them to and they, again, would tell not only the classmates, but their parents, who maybe they haven't served, and their relatives, and it'd be a very good situation. Yeah. What about, Judge, what about technology? You've been 25 years as judge. What changes has the technology field caused to the court?
Technology's been amazing. When I first came in, oftentimes we have prisoners, okay, and they're in the Medina County Jail. Well, it used to be you'd have to, if I need to bring someone down, I'd have to have an officer, whether it's a Wadsworth Highway Patrol, a deputy, Seville, Lodi officer, whoever's case it was, would go to the jail, pick the prisoner up, drive him to Wadsworth. I'd work him into this, then they'd have to drive him back. My first or second year, we got video arraignment, okay? Now, the idea was started before me, but I got it implemented, okay? We got it in. So what we have a TV in the courtroom, we have a TV in the jail. We call the jail, they turn their TV on, I turn my TV on, it's picture in picture, we live time, we talk back and forth, and it saved, it was about a $40,000 a year savings when you add up the city, all the different police departments, just in man hours that they saved just being a babysitter or taxi service.
Plus now gasoline has gone up.
Plus safety.
Yeah.
You didn't have to transfer prisoners or from Medina to Wadsworth and back. So it just worked out great. And then I think the first system we put in cost $40,000. Then I think the second time we had to do it was like $20,000. I think the last time we did it, upgraded, it was like $10,000 or $11,000. Because technology has gotten so advanced. And now we have good pictures, good service. So that's been a big help. Just in the court proceedings, when I came in, we had the old VCRs. Because we don't have court stenographers. We have recordings, which is cheaper, less manpower. And I had a camera and audio, so I could see both. We had the old. Now we're digital. Before I'd have those 8 or those VCR tape decks. Mm-hmm. Well, I'd have to store those. I had rooms full of these. Well, in our basement, we have to keep our files, like some of them, for 50 years. Okay, so we used to store them off site. It got too expensive. So we have discs. I can do a ton. I can put a ton of cases on a single disc, and those don't take up much room. So that's been fantastic. All my clerks now have scanners. So again, instead of keeping the paper files that I have a whole basement full, at the end of the file, we can scan those onto a disc again. So I don't have to keep the hard. We can pull them up. They're on the computer, backup. So, that's been amazing. We do e-tickets. Highway Patrol. We were one of the first in Ohio to do e-tickets for the Highway Patrol. This was a number of years ago, where the Highway Patrol, when they cite you, they have a computer. They can actually hand the person a printout of the ticket, but it's in computer. At the end of the day, they hit it just automatically downloads into our system. So my clerks don't have to, you have less errors, less trying to read an officer's writing. And more of the local officers are going to go to e-tickets. That's just the way it's coming. So
there's no way the officer's going to lose that in case I would be speeding,
right. Well,
or some of my friends would be speeding.
Unfortunately, we're going to have your ticket, Joanne.
Okay.
No, not Joanne. She wouldn't get one.
No.
But you don't lose it, or you don't have to wait because a person shows up. Says, I was told to be here, and the officer didn't send it. Didn't file it yet. So that eliminates a lot of that.
What do the attorneys think about the technology? Do they they appreciate it?
Absolutely.
And it really speeds their number of cases they can have?
Well, just with email. Well, first it started with faxes. Faxes. Wow, what a fax! I can fax the court this document, this motion. Well, now they can file it email, or they can file it, electronically, and so they can write from the office, type it, boom, just shoot it to us. We get it, timestamp it, and so. That's been, I think the attorneys all like that. It's easier for them to file things. They don't have to worry about, maybe it's easier to get some deadlines so they don't miss deadlines. They can get this sent out. They can send it all night. I mean, in the evening, they can even send it to us. We'll get it, we, process it. So, and it comes with a timestamp when they mail it out. So yeah, I think the attorneys have enjoyed it.
What about those defendants that really don't have the financial resources to hire an attorney? What does the court need to do with those folks? And if they have to be assigned one, where does the money come from?
Okay, that's a good question. Obviously, when I first started, we had all the local attorneys would volunteer to take pro bono cases, take these cases for no fee. Then public defenders, state public defenders say, we need to pay them. And we have to. If someone can't afford it, I'll get them an attorney. If they're looking at jail, they have a right to be represented by an attorney. So we have to find them an attorney. Then for a number of years, we had a public defender's office because the county decided it was cheaper for them to fund a whole public defenders than keep paying all the attorneys. And I think that worked well for a while. And just, I think within the last year, they just dissolved the public defenders. Mm-hmm. So now we're back to appointing private attorneys. So we get a list of attorneys who are willing to do it, and they get paid. And, they keep changing the rates. It's like, $50 an hour in or out of court. And so we monitor that. And so if someone comes in, we have to have them fill out it's a financial disclosure form that, give me information about, are they working? Because you can still have a job and still qualify. A lot of them don't have jobs, and it's a lot easier to qualify. But, they don't have expendable money, or they don't have the funds, the savings to get it. They're living paycheck to paycheck. So we get them an attorney, we appoint them an attorney, and that attorney represents them, and they get paid. Basically, the county pays them, but they get reimbursed a certain percentage from the state. And what the state reimburses changes. Sometimes it's as low as 60%, could be 80%. So that's between the state and the county. So they get reimbursed.
We talked about domestic violence, and I imagine that there's another nuance that's really come into play, DNA. Can you talk about DNA and what that has meant to the court and how that has really helped a lot of defendants? I heard an Alabama case on NPR this morning that someone has been in jail like 42 years and then was convicted by a jury, just 10 of the 12 people, that it wasn't even a unanimous decision. They're still in jail.
Different states, they have different.
Yeah.
In Ohio, jury trials have to be unanimous.
Okay, right.
Different states do. Well, and that's been very good for the courts as a whole. It really doesn't affect municipal courts. And I'll explain why. Our cases aren't, you're not going to prison. If you're convicted, the most I can do is local jail time. Okay? Most of our cases aren't that complicated. It's a theft, it's a domestic violence, and we listen to the victims. Our pleas rarely have to do fingerprints or DNA because to get those, you have to send them to the crime lab. And we have a tough time getting our breathalyzers and some of our drug tests back on a timely fashion. We would be so low on the totem pole, we're not going to get your DNA. So we rarely have that kind of evidence in our cases. But on the common pleas, federal, that's been a godsend, and that technology has also been great.
Why don't you take us through a DUI from the beginning to the end? I think, people are, realizing that does happen from time to time, although I'm not sure where it's been in the last, with COVID, if it's been an increase you've seen in the court, or it's been a...
COVID's really affected us. I mean, now the court never closed. We stayed open the entire time, okay? Now we went to a skeleton staff because the Supreme Court asked us to cut down numbers. So we did that, but we were always open. And the cases filed dropped significantly, more than 50%. They dropped, because the police were out there, but they weren't going to write the speeding tickets and the routine. They were out there. If there was an OVI or something dangerous, they were taking care of that. But we didn't have a lot of the other cases. But on an OVI, typical OVI, it starts with the stop. You know, the officer's out there patrolling. He'll see something that catches his attention. People say, well, you can't just follow me. Well, yeah, they can. The police are out there patrolling. They don't need a reason to follow a car, to watch a car. Sometimes they'll say it was suspicious. Maybe they made a wide turn. While that's illegal, I'm just going to follow them. They catch my attention. Or maybe the music's way louder.
Or sometimes they go too slow, or maybe too
slow,
fast.
Any number of things. So the officer will follow them and observe them. And then if they do a violation, whether it's go over, left to center, they don't stop at a stop sign, red light, any number of, they need probable cause to stop. Okay, they don't need to know that you're driving drunk or driving under the influence, because they haven't had any contact, but they have to have a valid reason to pull you over. They can't just do it on a hunch. So they pull the person over, and they approach, they talk to them, and that's where they say the window's down. In talking, now I can see your eyes, I can smell your breath. And the officers are trained to look for clues, okay? It may be things that say, well, do I have justification to continue the stop? If you don't, have a nice evening, go on. If there's something there that they say, I have reason to have you step out of the car, maybe do some tests, then they can have them do some field tests. They'll do the eyes, as horizontal gaze and nystagmus test. It's an involuntary jerkness of the eye. You can't practice it, you can't defend against it, it's just what it is. And then they have you do some walk and turns, standing on one leg, different tests. They might have you do alphabet, counting backwards, different things like that. And then if they think they have sufficient reason, probable cause to arrest you, then they'll arrest you, have you go down to the station, have a breathalyzer. With the consent law in Ohio, every time when you got your lessons, you consented to take a test. So if you don't take that test, you're subject to an automatic 1-year license suspension. Whether you get charged or even if you're found not guilty of the OVI, if you refuse a test, that's a 1-year suspension, period.
Irregardless of what the test says.
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. If you refuse it, that's a violation. So they take the test and they get a number, and then they come to court. I explain the ticket at the arraignment, what you're charged with, what the penalties could be from the bottom to the top, and then give them an opportunity to get an attorney, and the attorney would represent them, file motions. And on that, they're going to file a motion. Was the stop proper? Was there did the police violate the person's constitutional rights? Bad stop. Didn't have probable cause to arrest. And we'll have a hearing on that. Most OVIs are won or lost there. Okay, the motion hearing. Okay, because if the stop was bad or they didn't have enough evidence, I'll throw the evidence out. Then the state has to dismiss the case. If I find the stop and the tests were all fine and within parameters, then we go to trial. And if you have a test, if you're over a .07, that's basically all they have to show. So that's why your case is usually in the motion hearing process. But then we bring a jury in, they'll hear the evidence, and they'll decide guilt or innocence.
What about someone that has been in the court multiple times for that? You probably don't have the patience, or the jury wouldn't.
The jury doesn't know that. See, that's the beautiful thing about it.
Oh, okay.
If you're just charged with OVI, if you had one more than 10 years ago, you could have had 5 more than 10 years ago. This trial, they only know that you've been charged with this. Okay. Now, if you've had some within the last 10 years, then that elevates the charge. Then the jury does know that. And the jury, people are human nature. That's going to be tougher to beat an OVI charge if they know you've had multiple others. Okay.
What specifics has the court done in regards to COVID? I understand that now you've kind of moved from your small confines to the council chambers.
Actually, we're in a nice. When we first started, we required masks, social distancing. I actually bought thermal imaging cameras, so out in our lobby we could take temperatures and thermal imaging. I mean, it was really nice. So we could take the temperature. We had the questions, face masks or face coverings, I should say. They could be shields. They could be bandanas, anything for cover. We did all that, and that's everybody. That's not only the people coming in. That's the police. That's the attorneys. That's me and my staff. Everyone covered that. But for a jury, and then in the back, we also limited access to your friends and family. Just didn't come for moral support. If you weren't an attorney of the party, we didn't have the room for you. And in my courtroom in the back, we have 3 benches where the public sits. And I could go 3, 2, 3. I mark off 6 feet, so I marked off sit here, so I could sit 8 back there. And when we did arraignments, instead of bringing everybody in, we'd bring 8 at a time. We do those 8, they leave, we bring 8 more in, okay? For a jury, the jury can sit there, and we put an alternate against the wall. So, we could, and then when we have a jury trial, they stay in there, and we leave. But to select it, since we have the city hall chambers, council chambers right across the hall. And so we could go in there, and we could spread out 25 seats, 6 feet staggered, and then we sit up where the council sits. And beforehand, we'd come in, set it up. My staff comes in. We sanitize, because city even got us sprayers. We had some nice equipment. We'd spray everything down. Afterwards, they'd go in, they'd spray everything down again. When we have a witness, we spray the seat. After the witness, we spray the seat. We had hand sanitizers all over. So we could go over the jury room, pick our jury. Everybody else leaves, so they don't have to come in. Those 8 came over. They sit in the back, separated. We had the jury, like I say, all the evidence. And if we had evidence, if it wasn't on our smart board, we had handouts, each would have their own copies. So no one else touches each other's evidence. They'd have their own copies of it. For them to deliberate, we left the courtroom. They had the whole courtroom to spread out and decide the case. It worked well. We've had quite a few. We've probably had over 10 or 15 jury trials throughout this whole COVID. And each one I ask them, what can we do different? They've all said, this was good. We felt comfortable. We liked what you did. And for every week except one, we had enough jurors show up. 1 week, just recently, we didn't. And like when we started this, I told the attorneys, if people are willing to come, we'll have our jury trials. If we don't get enough, then they're telling us they're not comfortable. Well, that 1 week, we only had 13. I couldn't even start. Now, fortunately, we didn't start jury selection, so there's no double jeopardy. We just continue the case, and we'll schedule it for another week. So.
Judge Steve McIlvaine, thank you very much. We covered a lot of ground today, and I learned a great deal as well. Certainly, we need to learn something each and every day, and thank you for viewing Bruce on the Loose. And coming up, we'll see and talk about Habitat for Humanity. Thanks for viewing.
You are watching WCTV, Wadsworth Community Television.